Alright, so this part has been churned to this shape now. Now what we're going to do is put this in a 4th axis rotary and slit through it and drill through it to get us that shape. So in order to do that, we're going to kind of get this reoriented to what we want. And we're going to change this to the after 4th configuration under the configuration tree, because this is what we're actually going to be programming here. Now, at this point, we're ready to kind of go into the DFS portion. So I'm going to go over here to Delcam for SolidWorks, machine a part, current part yes, MC inch mill, because now we're going to the mill, open, and it will pull this in. Now you'll see the Z is oriented right, and it doesn't matter how this looks here because it'll just rotate for us to get what we need. If we wanted the Z to point this way, we could, but we don't need to. Right here, it's important though to change this from 3-axis milling to 4-axis milling. If we don't do that, it will try to make new setups on the side and think you're actually rotating the part in the vise and restarting. I'm going to hit the next button, and here I want to change this from bounding box to use solid body. And my solid body, I'm going to say open, and we're going to find the actual part that we're using. So in my case, it's on my desktop, and it's under dogleg part 3. When it asks us for the configuration here, I'm going to tell it first churn. So when you look here, you have your different configurations you made. I'm going to go with first churn and hit open. And what that does is it pulls in the part that we had just basically churned on the lathe, and we'll use that as stock. Our material here will be changed now to stainless, and I'll say OK, and I'll accept this. Now it asks us for our setup, and I can just go with what we have here. So I'm just going to say OK. Alright, so the setup is ready on this. Now, a couple things that we're going to need here. We're going to need to well, there's only one thing. We're going to need to make a sketch that's out on this face that's in the center of this. So to do that, I'm going to pick this face right here, and I'm going to tell it that I want to sketch a line. And I'm going to make the line from here, just kind of out a little ways to here. I'm not too worried about where it's at exactly yet. I just wanted to get it initially aligned to this origin here. But I'm going to get rid of that relationship here because I want it to extend further this way. So I'm going to click on this relationship and hit delete. And then I can grab this endpoint and I can move it. I do want to try to keep it snapped. See how it snaps to the center there? And I want to then do some smart dimensioning on here. I'm going to smart dimension from the origin to the endpoint here. And I want this distance to be... Actually, now that I'm looking at this, I think this might not work right. I do want the distance to be, you know, something like 1.25. But the problem is that it's dimensioning it from the front. And I want to do a side groove, so I need this sketch to really be on this plane here. So I'm going to go ahead and discard this. And I'm going to discard my changes. And I'm going to make basically my sketch on the center axis here. So I need to look at this. Looks like my top plane is where I want to draw it. So I want to draw my top plane. And I want then to make a line that goes from my origin out like so. And I'm going to hit escape. Then I'm going to delete this relationship and do the same thing I was doing. I'm going to drag this out. Alright, so now that line, when I smart dimension it from the origin to here, you'll see that my smart dimension is coming in from my top plane. And I'm going to make this 1.25 to start with. And that'll give me the distance out there. And then I want to make this number of the entire line twice that amount. So it would be 1.25 times 2. So that makes it so that it's going halfway up, halfway down, exactly in the center. And I'm going to accept that. Now what the sketch is going to do is it's going to allow me to do the slit through here. And I need this line to be, it may need to get bigger so that the slitting tool doesn't come down and smack into these corners. Alright, so I'm going to now go in here and I'm going to start getting this hole drilled through here. So I'm going to go to Delcam and I'm going to do a new feature. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to spot drill and drill halfway through, rotate it around, spot drill and drill the other halfway through, and then I'm going to ream from one side all the way through. But I'm going to set them up as both doing reams, and then I'm just going to uncheck the ream portion of the first one. That way it'll pick a smaller drill for the first hole. So I'm going to go to hole, and I'm going to hit OK. Plain hole, and then my diameter, if I zoom in here, is going to be right here. Now one thing I want to do before this is make sure that a certain checkbox isn't on. So I'm going to close this out. And I'm going to go over here to DFS features. And when I go to new feature, I just want to make sure down here there's not a checkbox in this add setup for new features when needed. If that's checked, it'll try to make new G54, G55, G56s. And I want it to keep just the same one and then rotate the A axis. Alright, so I have hole, I hit OK. Diameter, I'm going to pick this diameter here. And it's really important when you're doing fourth axis to look at how this yellow arrow is pointing. Notice how the yellow arrow is pointing up. In this case, it would try to take a drill and come up through that hole. Well, we want it to go down through that hole. So I need to click on this button right here that says flip. Now you'll see it's trying to drill down into it. So that works out okay. Basically, the next thing I want to do is have this go a little deeper. So my bottom, if I look right here, I'll click bottom, and I'm going to pick this face here. So it's going to go to that face, but I want it to go an additional 0.2. So that'll get it to go a little bit more than halfway. This is 3/8 wide, so that would be 0.1875. I could even go maybe a little more. Maybe I go 0.250 just to get it to go enough. And then I'm going to hit OK. Now it spot drills and drills it, which is a good start. I want to go in here to my hole and double click it. And I want it to say that I want to ream it. So here it says ream no. I'm going to double click that to say yes. And I'll hit OK. Now it says spot drill, drill, and ream. I don't really want it to ream that. I want to uncheck the ream. But the point is to tell it to ream it so that the drill size brings in the 120 drill, or the number 31. If I don't do that, for instance, if I go back into here and I tell it ream no, and hit OK, you'll see that my drill size is trying to be the 125. So I'm going to go back in again, and I'm going to double click ream to yes. And that way it'll update the drill to the smaller size. Alright, now I need to do another new feature, hole, and this time I'm using this hole. And you'll see the arrow's the wrong way again, so I flip it. And I tell it bottom of here with an additional, again, 0.2. So that it goes through. And you'll see that they're hitting each other. I'll hit OK. This one spot drills and drills, and now I want this one to ream. So I double click here, and I say ream to yes. And I hit OK. And then I'm going to tell it in my ream, when I double click the ream, that I want it to go a certain depth. My drill depth for the ream, I want it to go all the way through. So I'm going to tell it, since we know this is a 1-inch diameter here, I'm going to tell it that I want to go 1.1. Something to go a little bit through it. then hit OK. Alright, so let's look at a simulation here. If I single step this, you'll see it comes in with my spot drill. Rotate that back a little bit. Spots it. And it's going to rotate my part around. Now if I look down here, you'll see that it's rotated. And I'll do this side. So it does both hole spotting. Then it comes in, grabs a drill, drills this side. Notice how it's pecking. And I can tell it to go to the next operation. I'll single step it. Now it's going to drill the other side, next operation. And then I'll single step and you'll see the reamer goes all the way through. And I will stop it. So you'll see I have my hole all the way through there. Alright, so that was the easy part. The harder part is getting this slitting saw to come through here. Now with this here, I'm going to do a new feature. And this is going to be a groove. And I'm going to hit OK. The type of groove we're going to do here is a side groove. My boundary will be this one here. And you'll notice how, because I put the line where it's supposed to, it is centering it and everything. That's good. The width of my groove is going to be 0.375. And the depth of my groove is going to be 0.5. I'll zoom in here a little bit. You'll see that goes right to the bottom of that there. So everything looks pretty good here. So I'm going to hit OK. Now I get my groove there. I'm going to uncheck the groove so that I can actually just play a simulation here of the whole thing, hole-wise, and save this as a starting point. So I don't have to re-simulate that each time. And I'll stop. I'm going to uncheck hole 1 and hole 2 and check groove 1. And now this way I can do a simulation stepping it and single step. And I can see my tool here. I'm going to look at this in more of a top view. And there's going to be some stuff I'm going to need to change about this. There we go. So if I step this, you'll see it comes in, but it's taking one hefty cut and going across, coming out, and then it does the finish pass. That's all fine and dandy if you had some miracle cutter, but that's not going to work on what we have. We need to step that in 3 times. Now when we step that in, we'll run into problems where for some reason the lead in, lead out doesn't work properly when we have extra rough cuts. So if I go in here to rough passes and I go to step overs, if I change this number up here to 0.170, which is a number that we've come up with in the past that works, and I hit OK, and then I try simulating it, what it will do is basically crash into my part. Of course, it's not looking like it is here. Let's see. And it's actually coming back and then crashing. And see how it's crashing into the part. So it's doing a couple things I don't like. I don't like the bidirectional cutting. And I need to extend my line because it's crashing in because the lead in, lead out isn't working properly. So to do this under my groove 1, I'm going to double click it, and I'm going to see a spot in here which says bidirectional rough. I want to turn that to no. It's the only thing I need to change in there. And then I'm going to look at this from a top view, and I'm going to edit this curve. I want this to go a little longer. So I'm going to go edit sketch, and I want this to maybe be, oh, let's say 3 inches long. And then this would have to be 1.5 to get it centered. And I'll hit OK. Now if I simulate this tool, it'll come through. So see how it's climb cutting each time. And it's still hitting a little bit there. But it's pretty good. We could just extend that a little bit more and it would get rid of this little clip. But you'll see it going way in and out here on the finish pass. So on the finish pass, we're going to churn off the lead in, lead out. We'll just do it on both because it's really not working for us. So I'm going to go to rough pass 1, double click, step overs, double click, and I'm just going to churn the lead in and lead out off and hit OK. Then I'm going to go into the finish and do the same thing. Step overs, churn the lead in, lead out, off, and OK. And again, I wanted to make this sketch a little longer, so I click it, edit, make it to 3.25, and make my other half 3.25 divided by 2 to get it centered. Alright, we'll play it one more time. You'll see it cuts and there aren't any crashes into it. I want to do the slit after I drill the hole so that it deburrs it. If I slit it and then I drill it through, I'm worried that I'm going to get burrs in here and then I'm not going to get this piece in here. Alright, so this part is looking good. It's actually done. So at this point you would post out your code and you'd be good to go. I'm going to stop it here and you'll go on to the next video.